Show. Everybody, I want you to go to the Tom Kelly Show.
Here we go. Trigger warning. Spoiler alert. Let's boldly go where we have not gone before. You are experiencing a deep space edition of the Tom Kelly Show. If you've followed me, and at this point, if you're listening to the podcast, you're generally a fan of mine. My name is Tom Kelly. This is the podcast that owns the midlife crisis. And I'm a stand-up comedian whose life has been a mess since the beginning of the pandemic. And if we're being really honest with ourselves, it's been a mess for a long, long time. Quick background on me. I've always been the outsider in life. And one of the things that helped me make friends and talk to other people when I was a kid was my fondness for the TV show Star Trek. I spent, it was how I found, it was like almost a code word that someone else was a nerd like me. And then over the years, for those of you who have followed my career, I did stand-up comedy. And then my gateway to getting on air when I was working at The View with Whoopi Goldberg was my love of Star Trek. I will probably insert a clip of me meeting Leonard Nimoy on air right here.
Where's Tom?
Where's Tom?
Tom is right there.
He's right there.
Tom.
He is.
Tom. Live long and prosper, Tom.
Yes.
There's a whole new generation of Star Trek content out there. I love some of it, and then a lot of it I have strong feelings about, and I don't know if that's just because I'm becoming an old man or what. That said, I'm going to add one more side story about a guy who's making the news right now, a man named Ahmed Best. I knew his dad, Adrian Best, at Good Morning America. Ahmed and his cousin Connie was my union rep at SAG-AFTRA. Ahmed Best played Jar Jar Binks. And a lot of people sent this guy hate mail for the character of Jar Jar Binks on Star Wars. And being very honest with myself, while watching parts of Star Trek Picard, a show and a character I'm invested in, I have found myself doing some of the very awful things that other science fiction fans have done to a friend of mine. Like Ahmed Best, he's very honest about his story that he was on suicide watch. The hate mail was so bad. And then honestly, over the last couple of months, actually the last 2 years, I have stopped myself from getting into Twitter fights with Brent Spiner, who played Data. I kind of said something mean to him and he wrote me back a couple of times. And I found myself doing the same to Dave Blast. Now, to my credit, Twitter keeps showing me Star Trek stuff even when I don't want to see it. And I am more passionate about Star Trek than Trump supporters are about Trump and Trump haters are about Trump. And that's why I want to thank you for doing this, Dave. What makes you such a nice person to respond to somebody who sent a hate tweet about a note on your show?
I'm not a nice person. I'm just basically, I'm part of the team. And there's a huge, great group of people out there who are passionate Star Trek fans who, for whatever reason, have felt disenfranchised by shows that they past shows or anything. And again, I think that we need to open up it to a bigger thing of going, it's all a fandom right now. It's a thing. Twitter is a wonderful tool. It's also a cesspool.
Yes.
And it allows people, you used to have to be a critic and go to school or go have training, get a job at a newspaper and be able to write a newspaper article in order to be a critic. Now you have a Twitter account, and the fact that myself and Terry Metalis and other creatives go on Twitter and interact with fans is a great thing. It's also becoming less and less of a thing because people are just tired of people chirping. And again, I played hockey, and this is what we call chirping. It's like you just sit there and you get in people's face, you throw a little comment, you try to get under people's skin. And some people can deal with it, some people can't. I don't care. I honestly don't care if people don't like the show. But here's my thing. If you don't like the show, if you don't like something about it, don't watch. Go elsewhere.
I
always say to people, like, if you don't like my show, if you don't like the show, please tell me something you do like, and maybe get me into something that
Get
it's
me
like
the job there.
like the expand. Yeah.
All right. I want to
It's
pause
like, oh,
on
you
that
like the
sentence.
I like the.
All right, I want you to pause on that sentence because I absolutely hate that last sentence. But I want to get the people who are new. A lot of my fans are not necessarily Star Trek fans. What do you do on the show?
I'm the production designer, so it's my job to design and create all the sets, the scenery, the ships, the interior, the exterior, the locations, and all that stuff. So we get a script. It says the words, and I help bring those words to reality.
Okay, so is this a dream come true for you? Like for me, 14-year-old,
Yeah,
very jealous of you. Were you a Star Trek fan growing up?
Huge Star Trek fan growing up.
Okay, which is like,
so, I mean, and it's funny. It's like you sit there and you look at, I mean, obviously, and that's the other thing. I think that a lot of people on Twitter, they see creatives and Hollywood people as someone different from themselves. They're sitting in their living room doing whatever they're doing that they end up doing. It's like, well, everyone has paths in life. Mine just happened to lead to Hollywood, whereas yours led to stand-up comedian. And it's like, it's there's nothing different in our lives. So I look at, people growing up that I grew up with, they're like, holy shit, dude, you're actually doing Star Trek. I remember when we were in high school and you dressed up as Spock for
so were you that kind of kid? I was.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay. That's cool. Now this is where I'm going to go crazy. I really don't like that sentence, go somewhere else. Let's pause on that because I think you've accidentally taken over the Bible for some people. I mean, or I feel like you've inherited a cult.
Right. But here's the thing. I do a lot of these shows. And it's like, again, there's show friends and show business. This is show business. I do shows like The Boys. I do Constantine. I do, I do a lot of Preacher. It's like different shows for different people that are into it. It's like, oh, you don't like The Boys? You don't like the version of The Boys? I'm sorry. This is what we're doing. If you don't like it, there's nothing I can do to stop you from whatever. There's 8 million other shows. I'm sorry, we're all roughly of the same age demographic. When we were growing up, you had 4 channels.
Yeah. So I'm 46, and I feel like just from your resume, you're about that.
Yeah. So you're like sitting there going, growing up, you had 4 channels, and then later on, you got VHS and whatever. So there weren't options. Now we have 8 billion options of things to go do and watch and whatever. It's like, so that's my whole thing. It's like there's entire blogs that are going out and trashing shows, and that's what they do. And I'm like, it's weird to me. I'm like, you spend your time talking about shit you don't like. Go find something you do like.
Okay, so let's talk about the aspects of Star Trek I do like. And maybe is this a show made for people who liked Star Trek? I feel like my overall complaint about Star Trek Picard is it feels like a cash grab and it's starring the actors who just don't want to be on the show. I feel like the show, my complaint about most of the Paramount plus CBS All Access Star Trek shows is none of the shows know what they want to be. They're pounding out the scripts as fast as they can. And at times there is fan service. And I'm going to also say that serialized storytelling does not work for Star Trek, and neither do modern, like I always felt like this is a interesting science fiction show. And maybe if it weren't Star Trek, I would be more interested in it. But it's not Star Trek. I guess, can we start with that thought? What do you think of that? There's a lot.
Okay, there was about 9 thoughts in there.
I know. Yeah. I'm unloaded, and I'm sorry, Dave.
So no, it's all good. So serialized thing. Again, the key thing is Star Trek, when it came back as Next Generation, was picking up where the world left off. We're talking and I know this because I was in college at the time. So you're talking 1986, 1987, where the idea of a through storyline, a whole storyline that continues and is not episodic, didn't exist. So It's like, that's what it was. Everyone told the story, and it's like, so then you run into, and again, really important to track the players. Then you get into shows like Lost. Lost kind of changed the world, where it's like, oh, here's this big mystery box story created by J.J. Abrams, follow the threads, where it's like, here's the thing where we're going to tell a story and really rope in an audience into a big story that tells an arc of the story. It's a big movie over the course of 10, 20, whatever episodes. It's a big work of cinema. It's not a 2-hour movie. It's a 20-hour movie or a 10-hour movie. And then everyone's like, ooh, that's story-wise. Wouldn't that be? Because we never have enough time to, Peter Jackson doesn't have enough time to tell Lord of the Rings in his 3 hours, 4 hours. Everyone wants more time to tell their story. Right. So thus is where it comes out. So is it the best storytelling thing? Here's what I like. I like at the end of Star Trek, we're at the end of the episode, they did the thing, and then you went, oh, wow, wasn't that cool? And then you felt good at the end of the episode. Now, modern day Star Trek and modern day shows, they don't always do that. They don't always wrap up the case at the end of the show. And again, that is not a trend in Star Trek. That is a trend in cinema, in TV. All the shows are doing that. So will it change? Yes, because you've already seen that with Strange New Worlds, where they said, hey, what if we didn't do this story? What if we did that? And that is a massive shift by a giant company with a huge property saying, what if we try this? What will the fans think? And what did the fans think? They loved it. And it's really different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to just focusing on the writing for a second. I feel the problem with the modern Star Trek properties, and I could just tell this as a guy who has not really read the trades on this. You could tell with the changing executive producer names, there's a lot of opinions in it. You could tell by the changing stories that over 3 years, there's a lot of loose ends that haven't been tied together. There was a great line about Star Trek V. It was a retroactive review of Star Trek, but there was a great line about that said, loving Star Trek means admitting that half of it is crap. And that's judging the 50-year body of work. I think the problem with the serialized storytelling is if there's a detail that I don't like in Strange New Worlds, well, it'll be gone next week. The problem with a detail that I don't like in Star Trek Picard or even Discovery is you're stuck with it for the rest of the series. And my problem with this from a storytelling point of view is outside of seeing familiar faces, I don't know why I care. Yeah, except that I've watched the first 49 or 54 years of Star Trek. I'm not sure why I'm here anymore. And I felt you had good counterpoints to that when we were talking on Twitter. Are you emotionally invested in the series?
Yeah, again,
so
100%. Like, and I think to say that the actors don't want to be there, it's fucking crazy. You can go on to like this week. We have an episode, and we introduced the character of LeVar Burton back into the show. And LeVar walked on the set, and he saw what I put together for his desk, and he noticed all the details that we had brought back from his past and how it tied into his character. And then it was like sitting there building the world of Geordi LaForge and who he was and what was important to him. And he walked up to me and gave me a fucking big kiss on the cheek. He's like, you get it. He's like, thank you. You get it. I'm coming back and I'm doing this thing. All these actors are out there going, yeah, this is what we want to do. We want to do this show. And to say that Terry Matalas doesn't give a shit about Star Trek, it's fucking crazy. It's just, and that's the whole thing. It's like, you can sit there and say, I don't like this or I don't like this. But to sit there and say that the showrunner, writing producer of the show does not care about Star Trek is just fundamentally.
I don't think it's Gene Roddenberry Star Trek for sure. And I think countering that point, and I have seen this in interviews with Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart doesn't want to wear a Starfleet uniform anymore. We have an admiral on the bridge walking around not wearing a uniform. We have other guys who are semi-retired in uniform. We have Brent Spiner, who's been saying for years he's sick of wearing Data's makeup, yet keeps coming in for a few minutes. And the great line that Brent Spiner sent me when I realized I was being a dick, his reply, I sent a tweet saying, good God, stop. Because he's done these interviews. We've killed off Data 20 years ago. That was his doing. He wanted to kill the character. And then a few years later now, after actually a very decent death, I thought, all right, we're bringing him back. And then we keep bringing him back as different characters. And Jerry Ryan also has made her complaints about wearing the makeup, wearing this, wearing that. I feel like we brought back the three.
Right, but
Am I actually, and I could be wrong about this, as a fan who reads the People magazines, I feel like this show stars the three people who don't want to necessarily be doing Star Trek, and we're writing around their requests.
Okay, first thing, we'll take it in order. I designed Starfleet Academy. So when Jean-Luc Picard comes and gives a speech before all of the cadets and Elnor in season 2, he is wearing, guess what we call it? A uniform.
Okay, and
stop.
He does it twice. You're right.
So either I'm right or I'm wrong. Does he wear a uniform or not?
Okay, to your point, if we're nitpicking on that one, which is true, he said he then corrected himself. He did 2 scenes in a uniform, and he didn't necessarily want to do them. He also did a second one that was a flashback scene when he quit Starfleet in season 1.
Right. So again, he is willing to. Again, that's Patrick Stewart. I'm not going to speak to Patrick Stewart's wants, likes, or whatever. We have a giant cast of people. I mean, Jerry Ryan is actively pushing for a new series with her as 7. So to sit there and she and Terry Matalas are friends and have been friends since Voyager. So it's like to sit there and say that Jerry Ryan is not interested in doing it's just massively wrong. It's like, again, lovely person, talented actress, loved working on the show with her every single day. Just an amazing person. LeVar Burton, the same thing. Brent Spiner, great person. And it's like, again, are they complicated person? It's the Tom Brady effect of going, oh, I want to retire. I don't want to retire. What do I want to do? I don't know. Again, having worked with all these people, they all showed up. They were all amazing professionals and all loved being there. And it's like, you're sitting there watching these people go, wow, that was a fun experience that we had. Wow, wasn't that great? And again, it's a situation where you, as a Star Trek person, you realize that tracking back the history of the show, that Walter Koenig, Nichelle Nichols, all these people did not have massive careers like Shatner and Nimoy after Star Trek. So there is that Denise Crosby thing of going, I don't want to become this person who stays in Star Trek. I want to get out. But then they're out and they're back in the thing. And again, she's an amazing actress, wonderful, huge part of Star Trek. So am I going to in any way whatsoever judge that her decisions? Absolutely no. She's amazing and a great tradition part of Star Trek. So it's like, these are all, it's all nitpicking. And that's the whole thing. It's like, do they want to be there? Of course they want to be there. And again, it's the thing of you're going, these people have been doing these roles for their whole life. So is it that thing of going, existential crisis of like, is this all I am? Am I only Data? Nimoy had that same thing. It's like, am I only Spock?
Right. And after this podcast is me wondering, God, did my life peak teaching people how to clap at TV shows? I'm with that emotion, and I'm with that, and I get it. But as a fan who consumed it, I don't know. There's being just human for a minute and not point my finger. Something important is missing here, and it just there's a certain amount of joy missing in this for me. But to be fair, some of that joy came back in the episode I was just cramming in to prep for the interview with you, and I hope that comes back.
I use the sports analogy because it's the thing of going. It's the Tom Brady, it's the Brett Favre, it's the whatever. It's the Michael Jordan who he doesn't want to retire. He wants to go play baseball and then come back and play basketball because it's like we don't know what we want. We don't know we just know what we're good at. And we hope that there's something else that we can do and that whatever. And that, again, that we have a lot of existential things going on in people's lives. Actors, producers, creatives all have the same thing. And also we're working in a business where it's like, if your phone's not ringing and then your phone rings to do this, it's like, do I want to do that? Do I not? Because a lot of people make bad choices and then they end up going down one route instead of another route. And they're like, geez, if I do this role, then I'm going to be the sci-fi guy forever. Or, it's like, prime example, for your people. I used to be so now I'm the cool designer. I do Star Trek Picard. At one point, I was designing The Biggest Loser.
Okay.
Crappy reality show. So I'm going down the road of going, I got doing this, but people would see me as you do crappy reality shows. I'm like, but I can do other shit. And they're like, no, this is what you're seen as. So once you get caught in that, you don't want to do that. So as an actor, you're sitting there going, do I really want to stay doing sci-fi when really what I want to do is Shakespeare? And again, that's the bigger point. And I think for a lot of these actors, they want to branch out and do other things. And so again, it doesn't mean that they don't want to be there. They want to be well-rounded actors. They want to do a lot of different things, and they want to keep working in show business.
This is where I know I'm not a great podcaster, that it's now taken me 20-something minutes to give you a compliment. As a guy who obsesses over starship design, as a man who has obsessed over, who could tell you what deck Captain Picard's quarters were on, this, that, and the other thing, I like the production design, especially when I see your pictures of it. I feel it's coming off as too dark on television, and I've been turning the brightness up on it. I noticed the detail. I noticed the ships in the ready room. The guy, I guess, one critical question, and then back to the compliment. I feel the ship is dark, but that might be me being crazy. Is that because I feel like I'm not seeing the great work I'm seeing in the pictures you're posting. I'm not always seeing that on the screen. Is he like? And I noticed that they did a correction on a 10 forward shot where they brightened up Picard eating in the corner after they released it at first. I don't know what question I'm asking there, but it seems darker than you mean it to be.
Okay, so one, it's been talked about. Terry talked about it. There was a faulty release of a bad color corrected episode. We had two of those happen. One was oversaturated, one was too dark. So they the great thing about video is that you can, or the streaming service, you can upload a new version and make sure that it's correct. So that's what they did. The term is cinematic is what you're going for. It's cinematic. So go watch the Joker, go watch the new Batman film, and that's what is driving the thing. People want that. They want the dark cinematic crushed blacks, everything. That is the current trend of things. Game of Thrones, another episode. Game of Thrones. Now, I saw the Battle of the Battle of Winterfell at Mann's Chinese Theater. I thought it looked fine, but color calibration on your TV, dark as fuck.
Yeah.
People's home theaters, how you watch it, that's a whole nother discussion. But there's a lot of what we're talking about is not this particular show. It's the trends in cinema. And it's like the odds of me putting carpet on the set is 0.0%. It's not going to happen because that's not a current trend. And it's like, if you went and bought a new house right now, you'd look for wall-to-wall. You wouldn't look for wall-to-wall carpeting. You'd look for hardwood floors.
Right.
That's the current style of things. It's not 1980s where it was wall-to-wall carpeting. It's just the way it is. So that, when I design my set, I'm like, here's what it is. Here's the lighting and everything. And then the lighting people take over and tweak on it. So it is cinematic. It's exciting. And that's what the show is, what everyone wants.
Now, 14-year-old
so
me.
If people don't,
yeah, no, I get you. Now, 14-year-old me being jealous of you. I used to read the Michael Okuda books, the Rick Sternbach books, and I would read anything that I think it was Herman Zimmerman was he the production designer on the 80s stuff and the 90s stuff? Now, those guys were so obsessive with some of their design, and I was probably as much of a fan of the production design as I was the show at times. Do you, when you're designing, do you draw where the holodeck is? Do you draw do you know where each hallway is? Like, do you know how many decks the ship is? Will you be writing a design book in 5 years will you be writing a Dave Blass's Guide to the Titan?
I don't have to. You know why? Because I hired Mike Okuda. I hired Jeffrey Mandel. I hired John Eves. I hired Doug Drexler. I hired the guys who knew how to do it more than I do. Well, so if I have a question about things, but that's not, it's a bigger point. The bigger point is the tech right? 100%, because we brought the people who had done it before, done it in the past, and we're with the smartest people in the group. I'm smart enough to know that I'm not smart enough. So, in fact, this episode, you will see the USS Sternbach.
Okay.
You know, it will also feature another. You know, so it's like we
I
know what the past of the
Yeah.
we know what the past of the show is. And it's like when I was starting the show in season 2, the first thing I did was call Mike Okuda. I called Doug Drexler. I already had John Eves on staff. These are the people who do the job, and you hire the people who know how to do it. So it's like in answer to yes, we're working on a book that has all the tech mail. Will anyone want to do it? And when, you know, it's like back in the day, you know, Star Trek would get paid. You would get people and they would get paid money. The technical manual that Mike Okuda and Rick Sternbach did came out in season 5 of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah.
That's 5 seasons of 22 episodes of working on the ship, where on the days they're putting all the stuff away. I had 10 episodes of Star Trek Picard on the Titan.
Yeah.
So that's basically season 8 by the time I would get around to having and again, they're doing the book on the side while they're working on Star Trek and doing all this stuff, and all this stuff is being compiled for them, and when they're going, they have it all figured out. So part of the challenge, and again, here's where people get into it, we finished shooting season 2 of Star Trek Picard on Friday. On Monday, we started season 3. On Thursday, it was the ship was the USS Stargazer. On Tuesday, it was the USS Titan. Normally, that takes 6 months to redo. So we had to do all that tech in a matter of a very short amount of time.
Great. Now, this is the question I've been wanting to ask for me as a fan of a begrudging, angry troll fan of Picard. Why did they even bother, creatively speaking? Why switch it from the Stargazer to the Titan? And are there legal reasons why we're not using the name Enterprise from a dramatic point? And we've never seen, outside of a few models, which I appreciate the placement of it, I don't think we've seen the Enterprise E, like we didn't see it in the Fleet Museum. Is there a reason why we're not using the word Enterprise? Are we saving it for a movie? Is it, I've heard it's because of the Paramount split, that we're not sure what elements of the movies we're allowed to use and which ones we are. Do you have any insight on that?
Yes, Jack Crusher says the word Enterprise in this week's episode.
No. But why is the adventure taking place on the Titan and not the Enterprise E or the Enterprise F or something like that? Like, is there or is it just they creatively wanted to do it on the Titan? Like, they
wanted to do it on the Titan.
Yeah. Okay. No, and that's fine. I've read articles where people were theorizing that this was going to be on the Enterprise, but one half of Paramount was suing the other. No,
none of the, again, this is where we're at, where people used to have message boards and they would go to conventions. Now they're able to voice these theories, and this becomes a whole thing, and it's like starts spinning, and it's like, no, it's like, we actually see the Enterprise. We see Kirk's Enterprise this week.
Yeah, beautiful. And I teared up.
So the whole idea that we can't say Enterprise. And for anyone, spoiler alert, anyone who's watched the trailer, you see the Enterprise F in the trailer.
I thought so. Okay, yeah. That's just the thing is interesting to me. That said, just a creative choice of like DeForest Kelley once had a line when they blew up the Enterprise in Star Trek 3 was they were killing off the biggest character on the show. I was surprised that they didn't and that's it. I'm harping on a
right, but also again, we're having this fight with the fans. You're doing something totally different and we hate it. You're doing exactly what we asked you to do, but we hate it. It's like if we put another ship, if we have Picard go onto a ship and it's the Enterprise, it's like so on the nose. And people are like, oh, of course he's going on to the Enterprise. I mean, that's so, it's like, oh, it's a member berry. And it's like, at some point, he goes on the Titan because it was Riker's ship, and it was like a method to go. It's like, how do we get on the ship? Oh, well, it's this. I used to be the captain, and there you go.
Gotcha.
And so again, why is it not the Enterprise? Because it's not.
I love it. I like that answer. That said, let me ask you one deep question that sticks with the mission of the podcast here is you have been your kindness and your willingness to spend time with me means something to me, and I appreciate it. I'm out in LA in April. If you want to go harass me at the $100,000 pyramid and ask why am I making the audience clap here and here, I'll go on your podcast. But real question is, I've admired how you handled criticism and trolls, even those who did not mean. Actually, I want to ask you about the holodeck, but let me ask you the real question, just in case your time is short. Do you have advice for people, not necessarily those who work in television, for dealing with criticism?
Sure. And again, I think it goes to a much larger thing, is realize that both people on either side of the conversation are people.
Yeah.
And that you more likely than not have a common goal. I got famously called out by Nerdrotic for something I posted regarding the Lord of the Rings. And again, the new series. And it was like, I said, here's an elf doing a stupid jump, and we saw this in Return of the King. It got nominated for best picture. Elves do stupid stuff. Who cares? And I get put on blast by this. And I'm like, it doesn't actually matter. It's like there's this whole thing of like sitting there going, oh my God, you got put on blast and people were being mean to you on the internet. I'm like, guys, it's the internet. I turn off Twitter. I don't go on. It's like if you read stuff and it's words are just like, they're not a thing. So if you're having a troll and you have someone disagree with you, don't sit there. It's easy for me to sit there and say block you or whatever. I up until recently, I didn't block people. And then I did have these very persistent trolls who would just like sit there and do it. And I realized that they were getting a lot of attention that post something on my feed. And then all these other people would start interacting with them, defending me. And I'm like, okay, I don't really give a shit about you're trolling me, but you're ruining these people's experience because they're here I post something cool. They're here to feed and comment on it. And now they see your negativity. You're ruining their day. And I don't want you to ruin their day. I don't give a shit about, my day. I mean, Twitter, for all everyone's complaints about it, it has great features where I can block, I can mute words. I can block words. So it's like, if I don't want to engage in the carpet debate, I can mute carpet, block carpet. And I don't hear anyone, chirping about carpet. So it's like, with you, it's like, why am I sitting here spending time doing this? Because you're a fan. And it's like, it's that thing of going, if you can break the barriers down to people and say, listen, I get it. It's like you're having issues with it, but what is it about the show that you actually don't like?
I'll tell you what it's missing. It's missing. We could argue about the serialized plot giving me a headache and whatnot, but on a very human level, it's missing the feeling that things are going to be better at the end of the day. And I miss that about Star Trek at the end of each episode. And if, 12-year-old me needed that. And
again, see, that's the valid point. And it's like, what you just said is like, hey, what I really liked is at the end of each episode, knowing that it was going to be better, knowing that the world was going to, at the end of my experience, I felt better, or I felt like I had closure, and now I don't get that, and it's like, and I miss that.
Yeah.
And guess what? That's a completely valid statement, and you're just like, that's yeah. And I think that a lot of people would agree with you. Yeah, and we can sit there and say, yeah, we can probably sit there and say, yeah, that's a cool idea.
And I'll add to that the Picard, and I do think this is Patrick Stewart's influence on wanting to be more action oriented, which he's wanted since First Contact, just from reading his interviews. I always thought the world was flawed around Picard. Yeah, and I also think the hard part is I like the characters conflicting a bit, but I don't know if I aspired to be them, each of them. I mean, frankly, even Dr. Crusher. In the Next Generation, I aspired to have aspects of all these characters This go round, I don't want to be them anymore. Like I'm not sitting in the, and the cursing is, just it sticks out. I just jokingly, I know that sounds like an old man thing, but for whatever reason, like you, I think you had the double dumbass on you tweet, like you were.
Well, also, I mean, again, we can debate it. I can sit there. And
for me, it sticks out.
Yeah, Picard says shit twice in Next Generation, so it's like okay, and then
Really?
he said so. Merde, MERDE is shit in French. He says it twice in Next Generation. He says it on the bridge and in front of other people. So,
well, I learned something from you today, my friend.
Yeah. So again, do I like it? Do I think again? I think it's not. And again, we can have a bigger conversation. You know, as a Battlestar Galactica fan, people are like, oh, do you like the old one or the new one? I go, they're both equally awesome. The older one, the older one I would show my kids. The newer one I wouldn't.
Okay, so it's funny. The difference is I was able to accept Battlestar Galactica, and somebody shoved that in my face a while ago. What I like and I actually accepted J.J. Abrams movies in that, boom, what you have is over here. And with Battlestar Galactica, the Ronald D. Moore stuff was a separate entity. And I guess that's the other reason why I'm so emotionally invested in this is it feels like a continuation of my childhood. And I'll let you, I don't know how much time I get with you, but I do know I have to grow up and say, like, you remember in Star Trek Insurrection, they had the emergency manual steering column jump out of the ship. A joystick jumped up so he could steer the ship, and all you need. And I got very angry about that in the movie theater because it was like, boy, does he have to go sit there and then move over here? That's just for drama, blah blah blah. And it's a piece of wisdom I have trouble handling as a fan of your work. It's a TV show at the end of the day. It is not it's not really what's going to happen in 50 years. Whereas, and I think we're in the same age group where we might have had friends who thought World War III was going to really start in 1994 because they said it in a Star Trek episode. So for me, I do have to detach a bit and enjoy the work. And I apologize I do apologize, but I'm glad my hate tweet got me in with you.
Well, again, it's nothing. Yes, and it is in the end a TV show, and the complexities of it. And again, without getting into the much larger thing, we're doing this TV show in the middle of a pandemic.
That too.
That means I'm in a fucking blast shield with face shield and everything. So excuse my thing, but it's like, is everything going to go the way you plan? No. I mean, when all of a sudden we sit there and again, it was famously reported in the Hollywood Reporter, coming back from Christmas, which will be next episode, when we were shooting next episode, we lost 52 people to COVID.
Oh, I missed that.
In one day.
Wow. Yeah.
And it wasn't, no, to be fair, they didn't put it was when we came back from a holiday and everyone tested off campus. So no one went, do a drive-by and then we're like 50 people, you don't get to come to work. But it's like, that's the world we were living in when we were making the show. So it's like people were watching it now and they're like going, oh, well, this little thing. And I'm like, you have no idea what it's like to all of a sudden realize, no, your construction crew is not coming to work for the next X number of days. You have no one. Now, the machine doesn't stop. It keeps going and you still have to have sets, but you don't have a construction crew. But that's the reality of what we're doing and the challenges of why things happen and everything. And again, that's to the point of it's a show business. It's a job. These are people who are making there's hundreds of people who work under me. We're from the guys painting the sets to building the sets to the props and things. And it's like, in the end, it's like you get people online going, this show sucks. It's like, there's hundreds of people who spent years of their life working on the show. And just to hear people like, and it's not that it sucks. It's like, oh, I didn't like that it wasn't episodic. But what you get is the show sucks. It's like, rather than it saying, I didn't like that it was a long-term narrative as opposed to episodic. And you got people who are sitting there going, yeah, your show sucks because of this. And it's like, it after a while, it's just like, whatever, but it's that way with all the fandom. And it's to say, it's the Will Wheaton got that when he was Wesley Crusher, Ahmed Best got it. It's like all these people, that's the thing. It's like when you get and then you realize it's like they're just all people. And you look at someone like Will Wheaton. I met him when he came to set. It's like the nicest guy in the world. And it's like, poor kid.
No, it's got to be hard. It's interesting for me is I've always been off camera on the side cheerleading. For a guy who's always wanted to be the guy, I've never been the guy, if that makes sense, if I'm saying that the right way. I've never been the direct target.
And here's the thing. Star Trek's for you then. Because Star Trek, the Picard, is about people who have run their race. They're at the end of their thing, and they're looking at their life going, what is it? What is the thing, and what are we doing, and what are we leaving our kids? What are we leaving thing? Who am I, and what does it? I literally, when Picard drops the F-bomb, he is standing next to his son that he didn't know existed days before. He's about to die, and he's like looking at going, this. And then it's looking at all these things that happened in his life, and he's like, yeah, that was the worst fucking 10 hours of my life. Because at some point in your life, you just have run out of fucks to give. And that's really where Picard's like, I'm not an admiral. I'm not a this. I'm not a that. I'm just who he is in that moment with his son. And then we got to deal with people like, oh, Jack Crusher looks too old. And it's like this and that. I'm like, it's like, guys, did you ever watch 90210 and Grease and Friday Night Lights? It's like, why do I have to literally log into Twitter and see what people complaining that Jack Crusher is played by an actor too old? I'm like, it's just stupid. But that's the whole thing. Every day it's like, well, and it's just like the swearing, and it's like, oh my God, when you watch Galactica, it's like frack this, and it's like, okay, but because that was different, it gets a pass.
I would love script approval for season 4 if there were to be, or and joke aside, I think. Okay, so yeah, joke aside, what I think is missing, somebody who gets emotional about it. I'd love to do I'd love to do a once over as a friend, or something like that, where it's missing the emotional. It's missing something, and I'm saying that as a friend. I don't mean to be trolling you with that. It's missing.
You don't have to. So. I the same reason I'm sitting here, I've done that to a number of people. One person took me up on it. So I said, great, let's read your script. Because the easiest thing to do is to sit there and say, oh, show me your thing and let me tell you what's wrong with it. And I said to a guy, I go, oh, you think you got a better idea? Great, send me your script, I'll read it for you. And I would say out of 100 people, one guy did it. And he's like, here's my script. I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to do. And I'm going to help you out with your script and get it to a thing. It's the easiest thing to say. I mean, it's like you got Rob Burnett, all these people. If you think that Terry Matalas isn't a fan enough to sit there and say, here's what we have the studio, we have the network, we have 27 people above the writers giving notes of what they don't like about the script. And so it's like sitting there going, I'm going to tell you. It's like, yeah, but they're not. Some of them are working for you. It's like it's famous in Hollywood. You can sit there. The great one is all the notes on Back to the Future that the Robert Zemeckis got. And it's like you got the studio people like, I don't understand what these changelings are or this or that. And it's like there's 8 million people who are giving notes, and it's like some of the notes make it better, some of the notes make it worse. No, it's just people are like, well, I can tell you what's wrong with it. And it's like. Awesome. That just like, I mean, it's like me when I'm designing a spaceship, I have, 5,000 people telling me what they don't like about it. It's like, and then by the time you're done with it, it looks like a pile of Play-Doh or it looks like every ship you've ever seen before because it's a ship designed by committee. I mean, for this, something like the Shrike, it's like Terry and I did it and we're like, I knew what he wanted and it took a while to get there, but it's like, but if we had 9 other people sitting there saying what they thought it should be,
I could say this as a gift back. Thank you for listening to me. And you asked me something before, and instead of making it critical, I'll tell you what I've loved with Star Trek, and maybe it's something that you could take forward, not just in Star Trek, but in life. What it meant to me, if I detach from trying to be cool and trying to be a comedian, is, yeah, I was the nerdy outsider, and you believed there was a future where the world was better. And even when you got to Deep Space Nine, where they were still at war and it was still dark, there was still, even with like the really darkest episodes, with there's one episode in the Pale Moonlight, I think it is coming to my head. Even on the darkest episodes, you felt like they were good people worth rooting for, trying to bring things together, and the world overall was a better place. What scares, that's it. I don't want to make it anything critical, but I think anywhere I could see that message with starships, photon torpedoes, and phasers, that brings joy to me. And I do see the effort that has gone into keeping old men like me on board for your work, and I am grateful for that, Dave.
Well, I think what this season is about is it's about guys, and I don't want to say guys like us, but it's about people who have had their chance to go on their go around, and who are looking there, that they were the Star Trek The Next Generation. Their generation is over. Picard is 90 years old. Riker, and these are older people. Their time is gone, and we're looking at the next generation, which is why we introduce LeVar Burton, Geordi's kids. You get Picard's kids, and you have this next generation. And what is it that we as parents have left for our kids? And did we do what we were supposed to do? Famously, Deep Space Nine had an episode called Past Tense. And this was very important for me personally in season 2, because in Past Tense, they come back to Earth. Now you got to follow the logic here. We're in the future in the year 2380 something, but they travel back in time.
Yes, that was a great one.
2024.
Okay, I'm with you. Where they go back to San Francisco.
2024. Correct. But they come back to the year 2024. That was written in the year 1997. So in their world, in the writer's world, they were in 1997 going all the way forward in the future to what they imagined the future would be like in 2024. In our season 2, we actually come back to 2020, present day, 2024, as it was there. And we messed up. We as a society did not adhere to the Star Trek thing of it will get better. We will make it better. We did not make it better. We were told by Star Trek what will happen in 2024 if you don't fix your shit. It's now that time, and exactly what has happened is happening in Past Tense is happening today. So maybe there's an allegory there for, we look at Star Trek as it's a message of it will get better, but also Star Trek is the allegory of no, it just doesn't happen on its own. We as a society have to make it better. And I think that is one of those things that we need to kind of internalize and realize that that's what this generation is about. Going, the Picards, the Rikers, the LaForges, they're looking at what did they do to make the world a better place, and did they? So, and again, that was Picard with his legacy of the Romulans and the things and whatever. It's like, how are you leaving the world a better place for your now kids? And again, that's a lot of the core elements of what season 3 is about. Are we leaving the world a better place? And did we make it a better place? So you can argue that story isn't, you don't like it, it's not worth telling, but that's kind of a Star Trek story of how do we, what is the legacy that we are leaving for our kids?
Dave, I gotta let you end on a mic drop moment like that, my friend. That was perfect.
My thanks to production designer Dave Blast from Star Trek Picard. I enjoyed the conversation. And for those of you who are new to the Tom Kelly Show podcast, hit subscribe. We are on YouTube and your favorite podcasting app. And wherever you get a chance to comment, even the ones I don't agree with, post them. I'd love to read them. Show love where love can be shown. And we have a new show every Monday and Wednesday, all available at TomKellyShow.com. Good night, New York.